Isaac paced the small cell. It was the morning of his execution, and he hadn't slept all too well, what with the sense of his impending death and the fact that Logan had been talking to him all night. Logan always talked, so that part wasn't a surprise. What was a surprise was that Logan was himself executed 2 days earlier. Isaac didn't know if he was losing his mind, or if Logan really had in some way returned from the dead. He supposed it didn't really matter, as it would all be over in a few hours. He tried to block out Logan's incessant chatter. Couldn't his now very much ex-partner let him die in peace? But he snapped, as he always did when Logan was annoying him. "Will you shut up? Will you?" And for a second he did, before there was a hydraulic hiss as the cell door decompressed and slid open. To Isaac's surprise, no one entered. "No, you listen," Logan said. "Pay attention to everything I say, because we're getting out of here." Welcome to The Bad Spot, an actual play podcast in which I, Matt Risby, and I alone, am playing through Ironsworn Starforged. I hope you enjoyed the tale from the drift that opened up this episode. That was one of mine again. That is also my backlog of flash fiction completely cleared, so I'm going to need you, the listeners, to submit some writing for me to read. If you fancy rolling up on the oracles and seeing what can inspire you, then please get in touch via the details on screen now. So, we move on to Session 12 and what will be the mid-season finale of the campaign. I'm taking a couple of weeks off to recharge my batteries, but do not fret. I have some non-campaign related Starforged content coming over the next 2 weeks to keep you all sweet. We left Archer, Griff, and Luna aboard a Griffin Institute derelict found in orbit of a desolate grave world with a shattered moon. Moving through the ship, they found it must have been on a mission launched many decades ago, judging from the almost antique quality of the equipment on board. The entire crew are dead, with nothing but skeletal remains and evidence of some kind of failed escape left to tell their story. The ship is a research vessel, and in its central facility, Archer discovers that this mission involved both iron gates and the mysterious circular symbol he keeps finding. We left our trio having found a containment unit which held what appeared to be a segment of an iron gate that was emanating a strange, potent power. If you want to join us as we uncover the mysteries of the iron gates, then please leave a like, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you can follow along with the campaign when we pick up again in a couple of weeks. YouTube tells me that about half the people who watch these videos aren't subscribed, so don't be a weirdo. Click the button. You know you want to. So, Archer stares through the viewing hatch at the Iron Gate segment. And Luna asks, for a third time, "What is it?" And Archer is kind of turning this all over in his head. And he says, "Iron gates. They're out here looking for iron gates. Those are real? There's part of one right there." And he gestures to the containment unit behind them. And he says, "I'm pretty sure that's what killed the crew." "How?" "The gates warp time and space, but no one knows how to control them. They brought a section of one of the gates on board. I think it could have caused some temporal distortion, maybe." And he kind of tails off into his own thoughts, and Luna says, "Tempora what?" "The Institute said they didn't want us chasing rumours and myths across the forge. They wanted to reassign us to something else." And he looks around, he motions to the blackboard and says, "But they've been out here looking for them for years." And the low hum from the containment unit is getting louder. And Luna says, Do you think we should maybe go?" And she kind of gently slides the viewing hatch closed. But Archer's kind of lost himself in kind of staring at the blackboard. He's deep in thought. And I think what we're going to do here is gather information, because what I want to do is try and establish some kind of sense of place of where this ship is. If the ship was out looking for Iron Gates, I want to see if there's some kind of information about the sector we're in, or the part of the sector that we're in, to see if there's any information about this grave world, whose kind of orbit this ship is hanging in, anything like that. So what we're going to do is gather information, rolling plus wits, and when we scavenge or gather information on a wreck, we can take +1 from our upgraded scavenger asset. So let's roll it up and see what happens. A weak hit. So we gain new insight, but what we reveal complicates things. Take +1 momentum. And we also get another momentum from our upgraded asset. So our momentum is up at a very healthy 8, which should stand us in good stead. So I think Archer kind of rolls that blackboard all the way around. And after the illustration of the Iron Gate and after the symbol, there's another part of the blackboard. And on this part, there's a map which kind of illustrates this kind of bit of the sector that we're in. Now, we've been exploring the Corvus Breach. That's the sector we started in. And this map shows a small part of it. A cluster of kind of stellar objects and things that are named, and we're unfamiliar with all of them. And I think the map is in pretty bad condition. The frost has kind of damaged the board in some way, and I think a good deal of it is not legible. But what draws Archer's eye is kind of the periphery of the system and what appears to be denoted as a planet, which is just kind of assigned an illegible string of numbers and letters. But what appears to be marked on that planet are the words Paxton Hold. And I think that is very much the extent of our weak hit, that we have learned that the Paxton Hold is nearby, that it's on a planet rather than being like a space station or, kind of like an orbital settlement. We know it was in this sector, but other than that, we didn't know any details. But I think this kind of fills in a bit more. I think that's a key piece of information. I think that's a milestone reached in our quest to find Blake Sutton. So I think we can mark progress. And we're still only up to 3 on this. It still feels like we're so far away. But before we worry about that, we've got a complication because we rolled a weak hit. So what is that complication? So I think the complication is going to be that amongst the illegible writing on the board and the detail in the sector map that's missing is some details of very perilous, very dangerous hazards between where we are now and Paxton Hold. And Archer can't possibly know any of this, but I do. And I'm going to bank that for later. So Archer's still thinking, still mulling things over, still turning things over in his head. And I think that Luna is growing more and more anxious at being on board with this kind of strange piece of like ancient technology that's kind of emanating bad vibes. And she says, "Can we go now?" But Archer's kind of still going. He kind of still looking at that blackboard, and he infers that the planet that we're orbiting, this desolate grave world, was probably where the Institute found the Iron Gate they took the piece from, that they brought on board. And by doing so, he kind of theorizes that they've unleashed some weird time-bending power that is in some way wiped out the crew. And I think that with that bit of information, I think we can also mark a piece of progress on our background vow. We're trying to unlock the secrets of the Iron Gates, and I definitely think that is new information. So we can tick that off. We're even further away from fulfilling that vow, so let's not try and think too much about that. So that's definitely another clue. Archer and Professor Darwin had been in the Outlands searching for these things, And the Institute clearly didn't believe their work was important and clearly didn't want them to do it. But the age of this ship and what they found on board prove that the Institute was very much interested in iron gates. So the plot definitely thickens. And Luna says, "Archer." And he turns to her, kind of snapped out of his train of thought. "Can we go, please?" And I think that's when Archer finally realizes the hum has kind of gotten a little louder, and he senses that Luna's on edge. So he says, "Okay, but let's strip this place first. Let's not forget that boarding this derelict and exploring it was very much a resupply run. That's entirely why we came on board. So let's do that now, shall we? We've established this ship is untouched. It hasn't fallen foul of grubs or kind of deep space scrappers or whatever. So I think that Archer and Luna can very much fill their boots here. This is a research vessel, but also one that was home to a lot of people. So I think it's fair to say this is going to be a treasure trove of supplies. And we're looking for medical equipment. We're looking for maybe like non-perishable food or any other kind of scientific equipment that might be of use to us. So what we're going to do is we're going to resupply. And once again, due to our upgraded scavenger asset, we get a +1. So we're scavenging here. So it will be plus wits. It's a strong hit, which is kind of what we hoped for with all those modifiers. So not only do we go up by 2 supply, so up to 4, we get a bonus momentum from the asset once again. So that takes us right up to 9. Very nearly maxed out. So looking much healthier, that's good. So let's envision this. So Archer and Luna, they get straight to work. And Luna goes straight for the med bay. And she finds all sorts of supplies. It's old stuff, but it's all still good. And same with the food. She moves through the med bay and into the crew quarters and finds some like cans and kind of dehydrated sachets of, I don't know, space stew or whatever. And she's kind of moving quickly, is always wary of the hum of the gate. And she kind of finds this bag, this kind of big, hefty sack that's kind of amongst someone's possessions, and she just starts filling it and kind of starts stuffing it with whatever she can lay her hands on. And back in the research lab, Archer is being much more selective, much more precise. He's kind of almost pruning the equipment for parts, lenses and converters and batteries and power supplies, kind of just picking what he wants. And it's old again, and it will probably do the job. But he thinks, this should keep them flying for a while. But then he's also wary of overloading themselves. They've still got to get off the ship. There is a mysterious power at work here. And whatever the crew here were doing, by removing part of that iron gate, seems to have brought death and destruction. And as much as he wants to stay and learn more and kind of dive back into his old work, they really do need to get off the ship as soon as possible. So with both Archer and Luna loaded up, and even Griff has some bits and bobs kind of strapped to him, we're going to return to the Eclipse. And we've already explored this site, so instead of having to undergo an expedition, we'll make the move set a course, which is when you traverse a known route through a hazardous site. And you do that by rolling plus supply. And we boosted ours up now, so this should, fingers crossed, be safe. Another strong hit, nice. So we reach our destination and the situation favours us. Take +1 momentum. So we are now totally maxed out on momentum, which is a great way to begin. What could possibly go wrong from this point? So Archer, Luna and Griff make their way cautiously, watchfully, back through the derelict. And I think that the strong hit that we rolled means that we can bypass that broken catwalk that Archer nearly died on last week, which is a huge relief. I think we find a different route. I think that we kind of move through a succession of dark, cold, frozen spaces. And whatever happened here is beyond Archer's comprehension. But he just knows this is the work of a power moving through that piece of the Iron Gate. He just knows it. This derelict and what they found on board will be fueling his curiosity, kind of spinning those cogs in his brain for a long time. And I think that he is feeling like his old self again a bit. I feel like he is kind of making discoveries, kind of uncovering secrets, and kind of it's all tied to lost civilizations, maybe alien technology, and this is very much his jam. And he looks over at Luna, who isn't the professor. She doesn't kind of understand the significance of this. But Archer's kind of grateful that he has someone to share it with. And even though he kind of feels guilt at keeping her on board kind of longer than he should have, he's kind of a bit conflicted. And I think exploring this derelict and making these discoveries, and also the fact that Luna very much saved his life with her kind of strength and resolve and quick thinking, means that I'm going to develop the relationship. And, you know, Archer, the move says to develop a relationship has to meet one of the following criteria, and I think Archer very much leveraged Luna's help in desperate circumstances last week. So I'll mark progress on that relationship as per the rank. We're up to 4 of 10 on our relationship with Luna. So they arrive safely back in the hangar. And I think that we are now ready to renew our expedition. This detour to the derelict has been hugely informative, and it didn't cost us anything except time. And Archer nearly dying by falling down a hole, but that is just standard. Back aboard the Eclipse, the pair stow away their kind of haul, their bounty, and they prepare for the next jump. With Archer in the pilot seat, the Eclipse lifts up. Its landing gear is kind of already covered in this thin layer of ice that cracks and splinters as the ship lifts off. And Archer steers gently out of the hangar and away from the derelict, frozen in time. And Luna takes her seat next to Griff and straps in as Archer fires up the E-drive. And Luna watches once again in awe as the kaleidoscope of scarlet and indigo envelops the ship through the cockpit glass, and they make the jump. So let's undertake an expedition again. This time we're going to pick up our search for Paxton Hold. Now, back on the moon of Rust, Severinus Kane gave us some more information about Paxton Hold's whereabouts. And we've learned a bit more on the derelict, like we know that it's on a planet now, for example. So that's something, and we know roughly where it is in the sector. And I think that Archer feels a bit more confident with this information, and I think maybe the excitement of what he discovered on the derelict means that there's kind of like a fire burning under him, and with everything he learned, he's just going to kind of put his foot down. I think as a result, we're going to be moving quickly rather than cautiously, because I think he is kind of excited to find out what's happening next. So this leg of the journey is going to be moving at speed. So we'll be rolling plus edge. A weak hit. So we're obviously at 10 momentum. Do I want to burn it here? I have been asked quite a lot why I don't burn my momentum more often. And I think generally, as a rule, I only really want to do so on a miss, and a miss that would actually derail things. You know, weak hits, you know, I can live with them because they make it interesting. It's the misses that will get you. So I won't burn my momentum here. I will roll with the weak hit. So we reach a waypoint, but at a cost. And first, we are going to mark progress. So we are up to 7 on our expedition to find Paxton Hold. So we are close. We are real close. So let's envision what we see when we drop. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask the Space Sighting Oracle to see what we see when we drop out of the drift. So 78 is Fiery Energy Storm. That sounds not great, but that's just what we're seeing. What's the actual peril we're facing, which is, you know, the complication. 72 is Primary Drive or Generator Malfunctions. Okay, so yeah, these work pretty well together, I think, and they certainly work against us. So the Eclipse is in the drift for several hours. I think this is a long jump. And I think it's more than long enough for both Archer and Luna to kind of take turns getting some rest. And whilst Archer's sleeping, Luna spends some time kind of familiarizing herself with the ship, although kind of wary not to encroach on the archive in the lab, because she kind of remembers that shame she felt when kind of Archer caught her prying in there before. This is new and exciting to Luna. She spent her whole life on Rust, working brutal, long hours on the assembly line in E-Drive factories. But now she is out among the stars that she's always kind of longed to explore. And I don't think she paid that much attention to Archer's warnings about gazing into the drift too much, because she just can't stop staring at how beautiful it is. But she is snapped out of her reverie by an alarm that suddenly starts kind of blaring and bleeping on the console. She moves over and kind of starts pressing buttons. She doesn't really know what she's doing. She's never flown a ship before. But she's just kind of trying to find out what it means. And after kind of a moment, Archer joins her, kind of bleary-eyed, having just been enjoying some much-needed sleep. And he kind of says, what's happening? What is it? And she says, I don't know. It just started. And Archer gets the alarm to stop. And then Griff wakes up. We don't know. It could be, but I hope not. And the Eclipse judders as more and more alarms start to bleep and blare, and the console lights up with an array of warning indicators and flashing lights, signifying something very bad. And Archer says, hold on to something. And the Eclipse drops suddenly out of the drift. And the swirling red and orange of the jump is replaced instantly by a crackling blue light that they can hear. It fizzes and snaps as the Eclipse shakes. Archer kind of grabs the yoke and desperately tries to steer clear, but it's too late. They have dropped right in the middle of this thing. And there's a crack and a flash, and everything on board goes dark and silent. Outside, these jagged forks of crackling blue energy subside and fade, and the Eclipse is left hanging, powerless in space. And Archer kind of hammers some buttons on the console, and Luna says, what did we lose? Everything. Okay, so not everything. So our power's out, having been struck by an energy storm, and we are adrift. And I think we can say that this is the payoff to that weak hit that we rolled gathering information back on the Derelict. We didn't see it on the sector map, the bit that was all kind of illegible or destroyed and smudged over. It was probably detailing that there are pockets of these electrical energy storms that kind of rage and cause problems like this. And we just jumped right into one, which was great. So, we're going to need to fix this, or this story is going to come to quite a dull end. So, let's say that Archer and Luna head to the engine room straight away to check things over and to see how bad the damage is. And I don't think it's bad. I think this has just been tripped by like the surge, and we're going to need to do a bit of repair, but nothing serious. So let's look at the move repair. So it kind of details here kind of what condition you're in when you're making the repair. And we're definitely in the field, and we're only looking to fix one device, which is the power generator. So from this, it says we need a strong hit to gain 3 repair points to fix it, or a weak hit to gain 2 repair points and fix it, but with complications. So I think Luna's going to help me here. And when a connection helps, I get +1 if it's appropriate to their role. Now, we haven't really figured out or codified what Luna's exact role is just yet. But what I do know is that Luna is good at 2 things. She's good at fighting and fixing things. So I think in the short term, every time I need to do one of those things and she helps, I'm going to say it's fair to add +1 to the roll. And we're looking to repair, rolling plus wits. And I think repairing is fixing, so I'm going to get a +1 from Luna. That is exactly what we needed. That gives us the repair points we need. So, how do we do it? Now, if it's the power and an energy storm basically blew out our circuits, would it be wild to suggest that we need to get struck again to kind of jumpstart us? Is that stupid? Now, I can't drive a car in real life, and I don't understand anything mechanical, but I feel like being struck by space lightning might be the best thing to do here. And I think that's what we're going to do. So I think that Luna goes to work, kind of replacing the fried circuitry and kind of swapping out the damaged components, and she's kind of definitely taking the lead on that part. She's kind of working kind of skillfully and quickly with some kind of intricate tools and illuminated only by Griff's light. All the while, Archer is kind of watching the storm flicker out of the window, and his kind of brain cogs are spinning, and it's a real kind of Ben Franklin kite moment. And I think as Luna finishes her work, Archer uses the manual override on this device that emerges out of the underside of the Eclipse's hull. It's a kind of a long metal pole, probably kind of used when they need to take a sample of something, but kind of they can't get out of the ship. They need to do it from the safety of the cockpit, something like that. Just a kind of like a long, proddy kind of poker scooper thing. But it's metal. It'll do. So he kind of uses the handle and he kind of manually cranks it and extends it kind of telescopically out into space. And the energy storm outside has kind of intensified once again. Bolts of lightning are kind of streaking across the starfield, and the pole slowly kind of judders and reaches its full extension, and Archer moves back to the cockpit, and Luna joins him. And he says, "Are we set?" "Probably." And they wait. They wait, watching the storm intensify. This blue maelstrom of crackling energy and this metal pole pointing at it. Archer has one hand gripping the handle of the E-drive. And then the ship is jolted as a crackling arc of electricity connects with the pole and sends sparks and blue and white lightning shooting up the pole into the ship. And the Eclipse resonates, and Archer can feel his teeth in his head ringing. But then it all comes to life. The blue energy surrounding the ship dissipates, and everything in the ship comes on. And they feel the power returning, the churn of the energy. And Archer feels the E-drive handle kind of vibrating in his hand, and the engine fires, and he plunges it down to the console, sending the Eclipse lurching forward into the drift. And he slumps back in his chair. He lets out a huge sigh. And I think we can pick up the expedition again here. I think that we are so close that we can creatively say that the E-drive did not need charging. Or even better, let's say the Space Lightning gave it a full jolt and it charged it up to maximum. Let's just say that, because that's more fun. So I think that was a very hasty move. So that was definitely moving quickly. So absolutely no caution displayed there. So we will undertake the expedition, once again rolling plus edge. Strong hit, another strong hit. I think I should be very worried about how this is going, frankly, because this luck has to run out soon. So, on a strong hit, we mark progress. So, we're up to 9 progress on the expedition. Find Paxton hold. So, 9 out of 10, which I think that is more than enough to try and finish this expedition. So, we're going to roll against our progress of 9. Okay, that's a weak hit. So, we reach our destination but face an unforeseen complication. So, we get to mark progress on our discovery track, so that's good. But only 1 tick as we scored a weak hit. And also we're going to mark progress on our vow too, because I think that navigating an electrical storm definitely counts as overcoming a critical obstacle. So that's a milestone. And also completing expedition is a milestone too. So we can mark 2 bits of progress there. So deliver the databank copy to Blake Sutton is up to 5 out of 10. So I think we've reached Paxton Hold, and I'd like to spend a bit of time establishing some details about it. So the first thing I'm going to say is, what kind of planet is Paxton Hold on? So let's roll that up. 22 is a furnace world, and the book says a furnace world is a planet with relentless volcanic activity wreathed in fire and ash. That sounds fun, doesn't it? What can we see? So what can we see from orbit? Okay, let's roll up a couple of details of what we can see from orbit. Okay, 22 is glowing rivers of lava, and 52 is massive supervolcano. Okay, so let's envision this. So the Eclipse drops, and it was a much shorter jump, kind of a matter of minutes rather than hours, and they emerge into the orbit of this glowing orange orb that at first looks like a kind of dim, dying sun. But it's a planet. It's a planet of fire and lava, rivers of lava that paint jagged lines across the surface, kind of bisecting the planet into shards of scorched earth, divided by hot magma. And it kind of looks kind of fractured, like it's, the Japanese pottery. Is it kintsugi pottery that's held together with gold? It kind of looks a bit like that. It looks like this planet is held together by this bright orange lava. And as the Eclipse enters the atmosphere, Archer and Luna look through the cockpit glass to survey the landscape. And there's clouds of swirling ash and embers surrounding the ship as they get close, and the view is hazy and it shimmers as the heat waves rise. And there doesn't seem to be much life here. How could there be? It's lava. But the sensors on board kind of seem to corroborate the info that they have, the details that Severinus gave them, and the sector map that they saw on the Derelict. This is it. This is where they'll find Paxton Hold. And in the distance, a monstrous mountain dominates the horizon. It towers above everything else, belching great globs of hot molten rock sporadically into the air. We need to find somewhere to land. And Luna reaches over and points and says, "There." And she's kind of pointing over to the left, and it's kind of between the columns of hot steam that are rising up. She points out what looks to be a landing platform. It kind of stands probably 10 meters or so above the surface. It's quite tall. And Archer brings the Eclipse round to approach, kind of circling kind of once to assess the integrity before wheeling it around, setting the ship down on the platform. I think Archer needs to probably quickly see if the air is breathable before they just go waltzing outside. So let's ask the Oracle, what is the atmosphere like here? 71 is marginal. And marginal atmosphere says in the book, it's unhealthy to breathe this planet's atmosphere for more than a few hours at a time. So, okay, we'll need our respirators, but we can breathe the air if we need to, just not for very long. So, the ramp of the Eclipse descends, and the heat hits Archer and Luna like immediately. This dry desert heat that makes them both instantly uncomfortable. And then Griff trundles down the ramp to join them on the platform. And shall we see what features the surface has now we've kind of arrived planet side? What is a notable feature of the landscape? Let's ask the Oracle quickly. 37 is masses of scorched bone. Okay, wow. So, as Archer and Luna scan the land ahead of them, Luna's kind of sheltering her eyes with her hand and straining to see, and Archer's using the surveying lens that kind of clips onto the end of his staff. And as they both look, they kind of settle on this petrified forest about 100 or so meters away. And the trees are the kind of long dead. Nothing could possibly grow here. But then Archer realizes that what he's looking at is not trees, and he kind of looks at Luna, and she moves over to him and pushes him away from the scope to kind of have a look for herself. And yeah, she can see those aren't trees. This isn't a forest ahead of them. Those are kind of the calcified rib cages of some kind of monstrous creature jutting into the air, each bone kind of several meters high. So does that mean that there's life here? I mean, what could possibly exist on this place? Don't know. Something big by the looks of things, but let's ask the Oracle, what is life like here? 32 is extinct. Okay, so, all right, there isn't any life, but there was at some point. Maybe this place used to be, vibrant and teeming with life. Maybe it could sustain these giant creatures, but maybe the volcanic activity brought their reign on this planet to an end. Which is not of a particular comfort, I have to say, that this planet is actively hostile to life. But here we are. Okay, so I think that weak hit on the finish an expedition move means that we may well have found the planet that Paxton Hold is on, but we have no idea exactly where Paxton Hold actually is. This is as far as the information we have will take us. Now, shall we see what we can figure out from where we are? Because I think this is a man-made platform. So it must be part of some kind of like man-made infrastructure. It's not very big. You can maybe fit another ship on there as well, push. But it must have been built as part of a development on this planet. So we can't be too far away from something at least. So what we're going to do here is gather information again. And what I think Archer is trying to ascertain is whether or not there is any kind of obvious route leading from here, like a path or something, or if this platform is linked to something in some way, or if there are any other signs of activity. So let's roll gather information plus wits. Okay, a weak hit. So information provides new insight, but also complicates your quest. You can take +1 momentum, but we don't need it, so that just dissipates into the ether. So what do we find out, and how does it complicate our quest? Well, I think there's been something brewing here, and I feel like it's been brewing since session 0. And it's raised its head a few times, and I've mentioned it a few times, but I think it's time to bring it into the foreground. Now, I generally play Ironsworn with the ethos of not being too harsh on myself with misses or weak hits. I think that's how you have to play it, because otherwise you just won't get anywhere and it's no fun. So, bearing that in mind, I think it's time to ignore that and ratchet it up a little. So, Luna hands back the scope to Archer and he continues to study the landscape ahead. And then he finds something out of place. Something that isn't quite right. If he was honest with himself, I think he probably would admit that he felt that something wasn't quite right the minute he set foot on the platform. And that suspicion is now confirmed. As up ahead, he can see a path. It's faint, but it's there, and it stretches out from the platform, out past the scorched boneyard, and winds round some rocky formations that head up into some kind of craggy hills. And Archer sees it for a second, but instantly knows that if he lingers on it, that they'll be in real trouble. So he doesn't stop, and he continues to pan his scope across the rocks. But he knows what he saw back there. He's seen a person hiding among the rocks, looking at himself and Luna through the scope on a long rifle. And Archer, I think knows instantly from the loadout that the bounty hunters have beat them here. Now, remember in session 0, we said the sector problem, or the sector trouble, it's called, is something like bounty hunters search for a notorious fugitive. And back on Concord, was it Concord or Rust? One of those two places, we learnt that the fugitive in question was Blake Sutton. And we had to get there before them, and I think that being struck by the lightning storm and also spending all that time on the Derelict has meant that they have beat us to the punch and have got here first. So he continues this kind of fake scan of the horizon, moving swiftly past the rocks where the bounty hunter is hiding, kind of pretending he hasn't seen him. And he turns to Luna and he says, "Okay, we've got a problem." And she says, "What else is new?" "Bounty hunters." And Archer points off in the total opposite direction of where the bounty hunters are. And he says, "Behind me. Act cool. In among the rocks." And Luna kind of plays along, kind of pointing off in the same direction, almost kind of a little too exaggerated. And Archer says, "They've clocked us." "How many?" "Definitely one, but knowing how they operate, probably more." "So what's our play?" That's a great question, Luna. What is our play? I think we have to try something off the wall maybe here. I think the bounty hunters have the high ground. They're in like perfect ambush position. They have the jump on us. They know there's only 2 of us. They can see we're not heavily armed. So what shall we do? What on earth shall we do? Now, I have a plan. It's not a very good plan, but it is a plan. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to return to the ship and act like we're leaving. And then Archer and Luna are going to sneak back out whilst Griff flies off in the Eclipse. Then we'll wait for the bounty hunters to slink away, and then we'll make our move. Is that a stupid plan? You bet it is, but that's what we're doing. So we get back on board, and Archer relays this plan to Luna, who is, shall we say, less than convinced of its effectiveness. I think she would just prefer a straight fight to all the sneaking around. So, and I think she also knows that they are probably outnumbered and definitely outgunned. So she doesn't really have much of a choice than to go along with this terrible, terrible plan. So how do we do this mechanically? I think this is either face danger or secure an advantage. So we need to work out, is this doing something risky or reacting to an imminent threat? Or is it making preparations or attempting to gain leverage? Now, I think the use of the word imminent on face danger tells me that that isn't the right move. And I think that this is securing an advantage using deception, stealth, or trickery. Actually, all 3 in this case. So let's roll plus shadow. A miss. So this is why you save your momentum. I'm going to burn my momentum of 10 to turn this into a strong hit, because if this went wrong, then we would be right behind the 8 ball and we would really struggle to keep the story moving. So burn momentum, strong hit, momentum resets to 2. Then on a strong hit we take plus 2 momentum, so we're instantly back up at 4. So that was a good move. And also through the secure an advantage, we will also take plus 1 on our next move. So how does this go down? I think firstly we need to get Luna some kind of weapon. I think Archer's probably got another pistol somewhere on the ship for her to use. So he gives her that. And they kind of both gear up. They kind of take everything they need. Archer has got his satchel, and in that satchel is the databank copied. Remember that? That's why we're here in the first place. And he has his staff, and he has his he's in full-on explorer mode. Griff is plugged into the console and ready to take off, and Archer and Luna disappear into the hold, where there's a hatch leading out to the rear side of the ship. And they slip out quickly and quietly. Their exit is totally obscured by the Eclipse. They're able to safely move off the platform via the stairs at the backside. The metal handrail is kind of hot to the touch as they move down it. And they work their way down to the kind of planet floor, and they're now underneath the platform. And they look up and see the landing ramp retract from the Eclipse and watch it slowly lift up. Archer moves towards the front of the platform, peeking out from behind one of its supports using his scope. He watches the bounty hunter follow the ship with their rifle before holstering it on their back and gesturing off to someone in the distance. And then they're joined by 2 more bounty hunters who watch the ship go before turning and disappearing from view. And Luna says, "I can't believe that worked. That was actually ridiculous." I know, right? And Archer says, "Let's move." So we need to catch up these bounty hunters, and then what? Like, have we got to stop them? I think we do, don't we? We swore an iron vow to deliver this information, and I think that at the very least, Archer doesn't want this databank falling into the hands of one of the clans, basically, especially not Clan Thorn, but any clan really doesn't want them to have the information. So I think, yeah, we've got to stop these bounty hunters, haven't we? We've got to stop them reaching Paxton Hold and Blake Sutton before us. But, and this is a big but, they also could lead us some of the way there, right? And they must have some intel that we don't have. Otherwise, where are they going? So let's do that. Should we follow them? Should we follow the bounty hunters like a safe distance and kind of see how far we can get towards where we're going? Seems like a reasonable plan to me. I think what we're going to do is we're going to face danger, and I think we're going to use stealth, and we get a +1 from the secure advantage that we rolled before. So this is going to be face danger, rolling plus shadow. Okay, a weak hit. We succeed, but with a troublesome cost. Make a suffer move. So Archer and Luna wait for the bounty hunters to be completely out of sight, and then they move. Luna is kind of impetuous and kind of wants to get going, but Archer keeps kind of checking with his scopes just to be sure. And I mean, this could be a trap. This could be kind of like a double fake out. And when he's satisfied, they kind of set off, keeping low, trying to move between what little cover there is. The floor is ashen, grey and black, fused with these skeletal remains of the great monstrous beasts that used to roam this planet. And they stop periodically, kind of checking that the coast is clear. And in the far distance, the great super volcano spews out more red hot lava into the air. And there's this kind of sulfurous taste to the air, and they both have to kind of keep moving to their respirators, which when they put them on makes them more uncomfortable and hot. And if they wear them too long, it's just bad news here. They kind of work their way around the rock formations and along the crest of this hill the bounty hunters disappeared behind, and it opens out into a shallow valley, which was kind of no doubt carved into the landscape eons ago by water before this was all lava, basically, when it was a much nicer place to be. And the rocks kind of rising up on either side of the valley are kind of streaked with red and grey and black, and that's where Archer and Luna are hiding. They're kind of in amongst those rocks on the crest. And I think the suffer move I'm going to make is a hit to our momentum, because I think this has been slow going. I think that it's kind of hot, it's hard work, it's been a real slog. And trying to stay out of sight when there's not really much cover has really slowed them down. So I think we're going to take the hit to our momentum and bump that down to 3. And Archer has his scope out once again. and he can now see the bounty hunters up ahead. He gets a clear view of them, and they themselves are moving slowly along the valley floor. There are 3 of them, and let's describe them real quick. Now, I think from this distance, and the fact that they're all wearing kind of heavy environmental gear, it's nearly impossible to kind of pick out kind of precise physical details. But let's say the one at the rear is the one who saw us. They have a long rifle kind of slung over their shoulder, and they're kind of like a sniper. It's kind of, long range, take people out, and they've got like maybe a sidearm at the ready, should anything kind of pop off in the vicinity, because they don't have the time to get the rifle off their back. Now, up ahead, kind of taking point, is the smaller bounty hunter, who's kind of the scout. They're kind of moving quicker than the others. Up ahead, kind of like flitting between cover, watching the way, kind of making sure it's safe. They don't seem, from where we are, to be heavily armed. Maybe they've got like a set of pistols on either hip, let's say, twin pistols. And in between the sniper and the scout, moving slowly and purposefully, is a tall, powerfully built warrior, armed with kind of some kind of bladed weapon that's kind of on their back, and they've got like a carbine style blaster over their shoulder. Archer passes the scope to Luna as he kind of takes a rest, takes a breather, kind of takes in what he's seen. They're massively outmatched for firepower. They are outnumbered, and these are professionals. Archer is not a fighter at all. Luna can handle herself for sure, but against 3 heavily armed hired guns, I don't know. And Luna takes a look and says, "We can take these." And kind of Archer scrunches up his face and massages the bridge of his nose. She says again, "Look, we can take them." And Archer grabs the scope back and starts scouring the valley, looking for something else. "What are you looking for?" "Help." And this is Archer sizing up the situation, kind of looking for some environmental advantage, looking for the best spot in the trail ahead to make an ambush. He knows they can't win in a straight shootout. They have to try something else. They have to outthink them. They have the element of surprise on their side, so it could be something, but what we're going to do is we're going to secure an advantage again, and this time we're going to use focus or observation to try and figure out something that Archer and Luna can use to their benefit. So, rolling plus wits. A strong hit. So, we take +2 momentum. That is up to 5. And we also get +1 on our next move. So, what do we find out? I actually don't have anything for this. So, let's ask the Oracle. What prompts can the Oracle throw up for us? 18 is challenge. Challenge. Okay, all right. So, yeah. Okay, so it's not the environment that's going to give us the advantage. It's the bounty hunters. The bounty hunters are going to give us the advantage. Because these cutthroats are going to have an argument. One of them's going to challenge the other. I think maybe it could be a disagreement about something, like maybe over the cut or something else, like the direction they're going in, maybe. But yeah, these bounty hunters suddenly stop walking and start arguing. And I think Luna is kind of about to set off instantly, but Archer, who's kind of been looking through the scope, kind of reaches out and grabs her and says, "Wait." And the bounty hunters in conflict seem to be let's say the sniper at the back and the sword wielding one in the middle. There's no way to hear, but the sniper seems to be very angry, and they are jabbing their finger in the other one's face, angrily gesticulating, whilst the hunter with the sword stands, arms crossed, unmoving. You don't need to be a body language expert to figure out that the one with the sword is their leader. They're the one who's in charge. They're holding the power, and maybe the sniper doesn't like it. maybe the sniper thinks that it should be done their way. And the scout who's kind of running point up ahead, they're not getting involved. But you can see them kind of gesturing to the others to kind of keep moving. But this dispute is still bubbling up and getting more and more heated. And the sniper starts pushing the leader, who is just so large and imposing, they don't even move. And I think that might be Archer and Luna's cue to get closer, to get in a good position to fire, to set the trap, to be ready to strike. And they do so. They keep low, they move along the ridge, and the sky is kind of dark, and partly it's due to the kind of time of day, but also partly due to the ash clouds that are kind of choking the life out of this place. Either way, the bad light is masking Archer and Luna's silhouettes as they move. They get closer, and the argument is still going. It's getting more physical. They're pushing, they're shoving, but all one way. The sniper, who is giving up probably 0.5 meter in height to the leader, is just not backing down. Pushing, shoving, really getting in their face. And Archer and Luna reach their spot. They've got cover. They have all 3 bounty hunters in range and exposed. This is their best chance. And the sniper pushes the leader one more time before reaching down for their sidearm. And that's it. That's their mistake. Because the leader grabs their hand and grips it tightly. Then they reach for their sword, they pull it out, and they bring it down in one swift, fluid motion. And the sniper collapses to the ground. The leader still holding the sniper's arm in his hand. He tosses it down next to the body and sheathes his sword. And Archer turns to Luna and says, "Get in, get out. Stay alive. Got it." And she aims her pistol down into the valley. And we are going to enter the fray. So, our objective here is to defeat the bounty hunters. It has to be. I don't think there's any other way around this. We have to stop them, and to do so, we're probably going to have to take them out. Now, as far as ranking this goes, we are now, thanks to the brouhaha down in the valley, on equal terms, numbers-wise, but definitely not in terms of like combat skill or firepower. So I think this is going to be formidable. I've decided that during this fight, to decide what the bounty hunters are doing, I'm going to use the combat action oracle to add a little bit of randomness into the encounter. I've wanted to actually do this for a while, and I said to myself that if I got into a fight this evening, this is how I would do it. So everything that's going to happen with us in a bad spot, everything that we have to react to, will be randomly generated, which should be interesting at the very least. So let's have a scrap. How are we entering the fray? We're definitely ambushing here, so we are preparing to act against an unaware foe. So rolling a plus shadow, and remember we get a +1 from the advantage that we secured. So let's do this. Okay, so even with the +1, that's a miss. Not a great start. On a miss, the fight begins with you in a bad spot. And I think that what happens is Luna kind of is too excited. She is too excited. And she lunges out from cover, kind of somewhat over enthusiastically. And the scout, who has kind of been watching this disagreement from a distance, catches sight of her, and experienced and wily scout that they are, alerts the leader. And what do? Let's ask the oracle. 94 says weaken defenses. Weaken defenses. So, okay. So they both draw their guns quick as a flash, and they just open up on us. The scout has twin pistols, and the leader has a carbine, and they are just laying down this barrage of suppressing fire, which is shredding our cover. this kind of porous volcanic rock that isn't offering anywhere near as much protection as what we want or need. And we're going to have to think fast, because if we stick here any longer, we're not going to be behind much rock because we are being lit up. And I think Luna's made the decision for us here. She kind of gestures to Archer for him to go one way, and she's going to go the other, and move quickly along the rim to the next piece of cover, kind of dodging the fire to get a better position, kind of maybe firing off a few shots as we go. And Archer has no time to argue. He's up on his feet and he is fleeing back the way they came, whilst Luna moves further along in the opposite direction, away from him. There's more rock to hide behind, and if they can both make it, they'll be in decent cover, and they'll kind of maybe start to flank the bounty hunters below. So we're going to react under fire. We're rolling plus edge. A strong hit, so we succeed and are in control. Take +1 momentum, so we're back up to 6. And I feel like we are going to need it. So we both manage to get to our next piece of cover, but now we are further apart. But we have split their fire. And I think that's good, I guess. What is good is we're back in control. So we need to make it count. We're going to strike, and we're fighting from a distance. So we're rolling plus edge. That's another miss. So again, I think these bounty hunters are just too good for us. They know our tactics. They know what we're trying to do. And they definitely saw that coming. We telegraphed that, and they have matched us. So, on a miss, the fight turns against you. You're in a bad spot and must pay the price. So what do they do? What do they do? Let's ask the Combat Action Oracle. 54. Make a precise or careful attack. So, the suppressing fire did its job, and it forced us out of cover. And that's when I think the leader kind of stops kind of hazing us with fire and takes careful aim and shoots Archer. It's not bad, but it's bad enough to send him tumbling to the ground, clutching his shoulder. He's been winged. And the pay the price is fairly obviously going to be a hit to my health. So that's going to bump down to 2. So Archer crawls into cover, wincing with pain. And he looks back along the ridge, and he can see Luna ducking under shots from the scout, and she slides into cover behind a rock, and she looks back at him, and she doesn't seem panicked, which is wild. She's obviously she's obviously more used to being shot at than Archer, who frankly does not care for it. So what are the bounty hunters going to do now? We're in a bad spot, so let's ask the Oracle to tell us what the bounty hunters are doing. 10. Compel a surrender or concession. So that's cool. Even the Oracle knows that we can't win this fight. So the gunfire dies down. It ceases. And the leader shouts up, I don't know who you are. I don't know who you're with. But if you keep on shooting, this is only going to end one way. And Archer is kind of thinking, trying to work out what to do. He knows the hunters will kill both him and Luna. He grabs his shoulder. It's not too bad. It's kind of just a scrape now that the burning pain of the initial blast has faded. And he looks back along the ridge at Luna. She's crouched down, kind of coiled like a spring, ready to fight back. But she's kind of looking to Archer for guidance, and he kind of doesn't have anything. So she smiles at him and shouts, Are you surrendering to us? If so, we don't accept. And she pops out of cover and she opens fire. And now we're going to clash. And I think that because she's taken the lead, I can use her assist in a fight. And I think that definitely warrants +1. We're in a bad spot. We're fighting back, exchanging fire at a distance. So we are rolling plus edge. A strong hit. I can't tell you how much we needed that. So we mark progress twice. And we take +1 momentum from Luna's assist, so up to 7. Okay, Luna's boldness does the trick, and Archer follows her lead, popping up out of cover and just unloading with his pistol. And the bounty hunters down below dive for cover. It's impossible to tell if they've been hit, but before Archer even knows what he's doing, he is scrambling down the side of the valley towards the bounty hunters. That's right, towards them, squeezing off round after round. Luna is doing the same, and together they are forcing them back. We have them on the defensive, and now we need to seize the initiative and make it count. So we are going to gain ground here, and we're going to do it by maneuvering to a better position, taking advantage of whatever cover we can find, and this is in pursuit or maneuvering, so it's going to be plus edge. Okay, a weak hit, so we stay in control and we can choose either take progress, momentum, or +1 going forward, and I think we'll definitely take the progress here, and I think that represents the fact that we've definitely done some damage. We forced them back. Luna is charging in like a maniac. They didn't expect this. They had us pinned down, but now the tables have turned. They thought they had us licked, but we are coming back strong. And I think maybe Archer is kind of concentrating on the leader, and he has forced the leader to flee for cover. But I think that over to my right, Luna has actually managed to kind of tag the scout. She's hit him, and he's kind of stumbling forward, kind of clearly wounded. So I feel like we've got them at our mercy a little bit, and we need to make it a kind of a good strike here, because I don't think we're going to get a better chance than this. We certainly don't want them to take control back from us. So from the safety of whatever cover we have, whatever cover we can find, like some boulders or bits of kind of scree and debris on the valley floor, we're going to kind of settle in and shoot. Archer sizes up the chance, assesses the situation, calculates the odds, and all this while kind of Luna is kind of firing wildly. And he decides that he needs to kind of get out of cover and run the bounty hunters down. So we're going to strike again, hoping to land the decisive blow. A strong hit is what we like to see. So we dominate our foe and stay in control, mark progress twice. So we're up to 6 of 10 on our fight with the bounty hunters. And I think that represents the scout being out of the fight. I think whilst Archer has sent the leader scrambling into cover, he looks over at Luna, and the scout is on their knees in front of her. They're injured, and they're kind of holding their ribs, feebly raising their free hand with their one remaining pistol. And Luna kicks it to the ground. And then she kind of quickly, swiftly drives her knee into the scout's chin before smashing her elbow into their face, knocking them clean out. She picks up the pistol they dropped and moves across the valley floor to Archer. She sees his wound and says, "Are you okay?" And she kind of just pokes it without much care, and Archer recoils and says, "I've been better. So what's the leader doing?" So what is the leader doing now we've chased him into cover? Let's see what the Oracle says. 92 says, use an unexpected weapon or ability. All right. So I think the leader, they're a smart cookie. They know when the tide is turned. So they stand up, facing Archer and Luna with their hands in the air. And they slowly walk towards them, deliberately. They detach their harness that holds their sword in place, and it falls to the ground behind them. And the carbine too, drop to the ground. They are unarmed. They approach. They're a matter of meters away, hands in the air. And Luna and Archer still have their guns drawn, and that's when the leader strikes. And I think the unexpected weapon is kind of like a hidden, concealed blade, like a retractable blade that slides out from their sleeve or something. And they just throw themselves towards us in a flash of silver, in a last gasp attack. But we're still in control here. We have the initiative, as it were. We get to strike and not react. And this time, it's going to be close quarters. which is not Archer's strong point, but we're definitely getting an assist from Luna here as she can handle herself when it gets up close and personal. So let's roll that up. A weak hit. So, okay, weak hit. I'm actually going to burn my momentum here because I want to make that a strong hit, because if I don't, we'll be in a bad spot and we'll have to keep fighting, and that's just a whole thing. We don't want to do that. So I will burn momentum, which goes back down to 2. Make that a strong hit. So we mark progress twice and stay in control. So we're up to 8 progress on our fight with the bounty hunters. And I think as the leader lunges forward with this blade, Archer sidesteps the attack deftly and grabs the leader's arm. And as he does, I think Luna just pins them with a swift right hook and then follows up with a left and sends them crashing to the ground. And I think that's time to take decisive action and end this fight right now. So we're going to roll against 8 progress and see if we can finish this off. Yep, that is a strong hit, so we get +1 momentum, up to 3. And the leader momentarily tries to get to their feet. But Luna, I think, having seen that they've tried to trick us once with a hidden weapon, decides not to take any chances and just puts them down with a big hoof to the face. A proper toe punt right in the chops. And they are knocked out. So, Luna and Archer both take a minute to catch their breath. And I think that's a milestone, I think. I think in the kind of the quest to deliver this databank copy to Blake Sutton, I think the milestone of overcoming a notable foe is definitely valid. So we'll mark progress there. We're at 6 out of 10. And Luna says, "So what now?" And Archer says, "We follow the valley. That's the direction they were heading." And as he turns to look in that direction, he stops. Luna and Archer are not alone. The ridge up ahead on both sides is lined with figures. Dozens and dozens of figures. They're all cloaked, masked, and armed. And along the valley floor up ahead, there are more marching towards them. Cloaked, masked, and armed. And they're outnumbered. Archer and Luna are outnumbered. 20-1, easy. But Luna starts to raise her gun. And Archer puts his hand out to stop her and says, "Don't." And in an instant, the figures are on them. They don't have much time to react before they are gagged, blindfolded, bound, and led away. Archer and Luna have been walking for what seems like hours. Their hands are bound, they're unable to see or speak. They're kind of pushed and shoved forwards. They never stop for a rest or to put their respirators on. And the atmosphere and the heat is overpowering, it's intense. And Archer and Luna are exhausted, completely worn out. The adrenaline of the fight has faded, and the sapping effort of this relentless march has worn them down. They don't know where they're going or who these people are, but Archer has a pretty good idea that these are probably Blake Sutton's gang. And eventually they do stop. They are held in place and then dropped to their knees. Blindfolds are removed, and Archer and Luna find themselves at the bottom of a set of stairs. It takes a second or two to kind of properly gauge their surroundings, but they're still outside. The figures are all around them. The stairs are made of this kind of black, obsidian-like material, leading up a short distance to a building that has an arched roof and 2 long banners hanging on either side of a large, open door. After a second or two, a figure emerges at the doorway, then descends the steps. They are similarly masked and cloaked like the others, and they stop a meter or two in front of Archer and Luna. They take off their mask, revealing a woman, a head of greyish white hair, shaved up one side. An ornate tattoo of a kraken's tentacles adorns her face. Blake Sutton looks over them with her pale blue eyes. Archer tries to speak, and she crouches down in front of him, gently removing the gag from his mouth. The air is bitter, caustic, and it hits Archer right at the back of the throat. In my bag. I have it. I've brought you what you need. And Blake nods to one of her charges, someone from the other side, and they kind of step behind Archer and pull the satchel over his head, pull it off him, and they kind of start rummaging around inside, and they pull out the floppy disk, the databank copy the conduit gave to Archer. I think that counts as progress, right? In that vow? Because we're trying to deliver the databank copy to Blake Sutton, and we've literally just delivered it. So that takes us up to 7 progress. And I think we're going to try and fulfill our vow against 7 progress here. So a weak hit. A weak hit. So we mark 2 ticks on our quest tracker, and the vow is fulfilled. Now, in addition, there is a complication, or we realise the true nature of our quest. So the figure hands Blake the databank copy, and she looks at it and smiles. It's kind of like a faint smile. And she says, "Have this analysed." And she looks down at Archer and says, "Get him to his feet." And Archer is hauled up off the ground and marched up the steps towards the building. He looks back to see Luna still on her knees, still gagged, looking up at him. He passes the banners that adorn the building, and they display giant krakens in intricate blue and white stitching. As he enters through the doors into the room, his eyes take a moment to adjust to the artificial light. The room is long and empty, like a great hall. There are guards stood to attention, lining up on either side of the wall. They're all unmasked, and each of them has the same tentacle tattoo that Blake has, and there are more banners hanging from the ceiling with the same blue and white kraken motif. Blake is walking ahead of Archer, and as they approach the end of the room, she says, "You have delivered what I paid for. She was right about you." And then the door opens, and she says, "The information you brought us will be most useful, I'm sure. But what we really need is you." And she gestures for him to enter. He pauses, but is then ushered in. He steps into a room. The floor is dirt. He feels it crunch underneath his boots. It's dark. He can't see anything. He strains his eyes and hears Blake behind him. "We need you, Archer Barlow." "What for?" And then there's a low hum, and the room is gradually, slowly illuminated by a purple-blue light. It silhouettes Blake in front of him. The light is coming from 2 glassy black pillars rising out of the ground. They are thicker at the bottom, becoming narrower at the point, crossing over at the peak. Blake Sutton stands, illuminated by the eerie glow of an iron gate, and Archer's mouth falls open. She says, "You're the only person alive to have seen how these work. We need you to remember." Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you a million times. Thank you for watching. If you have not done so already, please like this video, subscribe, and click the little bell icon so you will be notified every time there is a new video out. I will see you in a few weeks when I return from this little break. Until then, it's farewell and safe passage.